Howdy, Dennis Bradford here. Let's think some about being, feeling, and doing better. Can emotions be scientifically ranked from most harmful to least harmful? Yes. There's not only a way to do that, but it's already been done. The basic idea here is remarkably simple. If we can determine which emotions are the worst in terms of obstructing living well and eliminate them, we'll automatically live better. It's good news that there's a scientific method for ranking emotions and identifying which are the most harmful. There's even more good news. Once they're identified, there are multiple effective methods that work for eliminating emotions. I teach what I think are the two best methods in subsequent videos. I'm here using the word scientifically to refer to a method that may be repeatedly used by multiple investigators to get similar, observable results. In fact, once you master the method yourself, and it's not difficult, you can check the results for yourself. I describe the method in the next video. Therefore, I'm not only providing you in this sequence of free videos a ranking of emotions from lowest to highest, I'm also a way for you to check that ranking for yourself, if you want to do that, and two methods of quickly and effectively dissolving unwanted emotions. These ideas are not original. Just like you may now be doing, I learned them from others. I've learned how to use these ideas to master my emotions and to live well emotionally. You can do the same. Permit me to put the method in context in order to prepare you for it. Scientists have well documented that emotions have physiologic consequences. Suppressed anger, for example, can result in hypertension and strokes. There should no longer be any doubt about that. It's critical to understand that how we experience life depends upon our belief system, attitude, conceptual framework. When it comes to understanding reality, we are biased, not neutral observers. This ultimately comes from the fact that we use analogies to learn. When we want to learn something new, we do so by relating its similarities and differences to what we already understand. When we learn, often our conceptual hierarchies grow both in depth and breadth. Sometimes, though, insights occur that require radical shifts in our understanding. We have to open up major conceptual space for them. These are called paradigm shifts and have major consequences. Just as, for example, they are important transitions in the history of science, so they are important transitions in our personal intellectual histories. For example, there was theoretical physics before Einstein and after Einstein. In your case, perhaps, there was your life before divorce and after divorce. Suppose, for example, that you just went through a divorce. Did you find it stressful? Perhaps. If you interpreted it as losing someone you really loved, it may have been extremely stressful. On the other hand, if you interpreted it as liberating yourself and someone else from a mistake that you'd made, you may have considered it a blessing and so not found it stressful at all. Let's relate this to physical disease. If you have an experience that you find extremely stressful, many physicians tend to interpret it as negatively affecting the functioning of your thymus gland, and that results in damage to your body. What they may overlook, however, is evaluating your belief system that was the context for you having that experience. Someone else with a radically different belief system in an extremely similar circumstance may not have experienced any stress at all. In themselves, our thoughts and beliefs are not observable. Being invisible, contemporary Western physicians tend to overlook them. The reality, though, is that persistent and repetitive stimuli can result in observable disease processes. Our habitual thoughts, beliefs, and emotions can make us physically ill. This explains why it can happen, and not infrequently does happen, that the progression of a disease is reversed by a patient's improving habitual patterns of thinking, believing, and feeling. For a patient to do that, though, he or she must swallow pride. Non-philosophers resist changing habitual patterns of thinking, believing, and feeling. That resistance can literally be deadly. Always be philosophical. Always be willing to explore different ways of looking at our lives that may be improvements. Always be open to new ways of thinking. Instead of interpreting suggestions to look at life differently as attacks to be counterattacked, take them as invitations to examine what might be a better way of living. Instead of cherishing and clinging to familiar and favorite grievances and hatreds, lighten up. Let's practice laughing at ourselves for being so stuck in our ways. Let's resolve to work on being more like philosophers and less like fanatics. Here's another important recommendation. Never think of yourself as trying to create emotional peacefulness. What? Why? The reason is that peacefulness is our natural state. It already exists. So there's nothing to create. Instead, think of yourself as dissolving obstructions to peacefulness. That's all that needs to happen if you are to live better emotionally. The more fanatical you are, the more attached to what you think are justifiable positions, the more you're in reality being an enemy to peace. The better way for us to live is to commit ourselves to letting go of whatever obstructs peace. Surrendering is the secret to living well. Let life flow. The more we master the art of letting go, the better we live. On the other hand, the more we cling, the more poorly we live, the more we stay stuck. Sages never cling. All our beliefs have consequences. For better or worse, they all have consequences. Some of our beliefs foster physical illness. While those diseases or dysfunctions can be treated physically, they cannot be cured physically. Curing requires improving the relevant beliefs. This does not entail that all physical illness can be cured by improving the relevant belief systems. Of course, its genetic programming as well as the surrounding environment affects the protoplasm of our bodies. It is to say, though, that genuine healing sometimes, and perhaps often, requires improving the relevant belief systems. This is particularly likely to occur when someone's belief system is dominated by a negative worldview. Here's a good way to think of that. In nonlinear dynamics, there's a law of sensitive dependence on initial conditions. You may have learned the idea that a butterfly's flapping its wings in the Amazon results in a storm in Texas. Sometimes, when there's a slight variation that's repeated over time, it can result in a dramatic progressive change of pattern. There can even be a leap to a radically different harmonic when the increment increases logarithmically rather than just arithmetically. We're unable to understand an experienced event if we lack a context and language for it. The more frequently that happens, the more confused we are about life. Our belief systems limit our ability to understand. Of course they do. Until there's a shift in our paradigmatic ways of understanding, some experienced events remain unintelligible. It's called paradigm blindness. This is a sufficient reason why living an examined life is important. If we remain stuck on our favorite paradigms, if we remain conceptually closed rather than open, we block any significant improvement in our understandings. That prevents our ever living better. If you haven't yet explicitly accepted it, here's a new paradigm that I'd like you to accept. Everything has an energy. Every form, object, thing has a vibratory energy field surrounding it. In that sense, everything is energy. A physician trained in traditional Western medicine will consider only the relevant mechanical, electrical, or chemical energies when examining or treating a patient's body. It may, though, be a serious mistake to ignore that patient's belief system. For example, might some patients be helped by acupuncture? Might some be helped by meditation or prayer? Why should a physician assume that the only techniques that might be helpful are ones that affect the patient's protoplasm? Why not be open to the paradigm shift required to think that techniques that influence a patient's energy field might also be helpful? There's no conceptual reason why they cannot be, unless, of course, someone remains unjustifiably attached to a different paradigm. Here's the payoff of all this theory. Since emotions are real forms, they have energy fields. Different emotions have different energy fields. The lower an emotion's energy field, the more harmful that emotion is. So, to rank emotions, determine and compare their energy fields. Neat, huh? In the next video, I describe how to do that. Let's end emotional distress.